Hello, and welcome to Rec Chat, where students and professionals can chat about all things collegiate recreation. I am your host, Rochelle Harvey, coming to you from my professional home at Western Washington University. Alongside me today is Max Miller from Swarthmore College and Zach Watson from University of New Hampshire. Both will be helping work the back channels for today's show. Before we start, we wanted to share our lineup for the fall semester. October 19th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time will be another Google Hangout with NERSA leaders to discuss equity, diversity, and inclusion and its impact in collegiate recreation. We will chat about everything happening in today's society, such as race, protests, and the upcoming election, and how to navigate these topics with our students and those we work with. Our November Rec Chat will feature trends in competitive sports, so you won't want to miss that one as well. As always, thank you to NERSA, Leaders in Collegiate Recreation, and HQ in Corvallis, Oregon for helping market today's Google Hangout. So to start off with, we've got a few announcements. We have one reminder for everyone watching. Please be a part of today's show by asking questions via Twitter. Tweet at us via the Rec Chat handle, and Max will make sure your questions are answered by one or more of our member network representatives. And now I'm going to allow our regional representatives on the member network to introduce themselves. Let's go ahead and start with Region 1. Earl?
Hey, what's up, Rec Chat? Earl Cabellin here, wearing my other hats as the Region 1 representative for the member network. Happy to be here today.
Jess, how about you?
Yeah, I am Jess Gentry. I am the Region 3 representative for the member network and also currently serving as the member network vice chair.
Awesome. Heather?
Hi, everybody. I'm Heather Foster. I work at Colorado State University, and I serve as the Region 5 representative for the member network.
Thanks so much. And now Brian.
Hey, everyone. Brian Smith. We're at UCLA in competitive sports, Region 6 member network representative.
Thanks so much. Those that aren't available today are David Parker, who is the Region 2 representative, David Peters, who is the member network chair, and Andy Lemons, who is the Region 4 representative. Again, thank you so much for everybody for being here today, and we are going to go ahead and get started. So the first question is for Jess. Can you briefly tell the audience what the member network is and its purpose?
Absolutely. So the member network's main purpose is to really just serve as the liaison to NERSA membership. It's very much a two-way street, so getting information to the members from NERSA headquarters, the board, our other leadership structures, and then also filtering information and feedback from our members to those same groups. So, really that's our main purpose. Ultimately, we're here to serve the NERSA members in whatever capacity they need us to do that.
Awesome, thank you. Earl, could you go ahead and talk to us, mostly for those who are thinking of serving in the member network, what advice could you give to them? And also could you talk about what type of time commitment is required to be a member of the member network?
Sure. So I think the first thing that folks who are watching here this afternoon should think about if you're considering applying is, knowing your why. I think it's important that you figure out why you want to serve this association. And once you have a good handle upon that, I think that is the, good way to really think about your application and what you want to contribute to the association. I know when I thought about this 2 years ago, after serving on the assembly for 2 years and being a state director, I really wanted to impact NERSA, at a regional level. And I've seen many regional reps do a lot of great things throughout their tenure as regional reps and creating, like Jess said, that member engagement and really advocating for your members. And so, once you get a handle on your why, I think that's something that you should definitely consider when you're applying. I think the second thing you need to think about is probably having a conversation with your supervisor. Your supervisor within your department probably knows you best. and knows your bandwidth of time, knows your priorities, and they may say that now's not the right time, and you should respect that as an employee. But most likely, if they are supportive of it, you want to let them know that why you want to do it, and talk to them a little bit about the time commitment, which there is some time that you will be dedicating throughout your weeks to get things done within the member network in your new role. And so just kind of break it down briefly. I would say 1 to 2 hours a week you're spending either within your member network project team that I think we'll talk about later on, as well as trying to get your regional leadership team motivated and moving. So your state directors and your state student leaders. Again, part of this position is, working with your regional student leader as well and coaching and mentoring them. So that takes time. And then a little bit more of the time commitment comes at the annual conference, where we're required to be at the conference a day before all the pre-conference events happen. So there's some time that you would be away for that. And then there's about 3 or 4 days in the summer for midsummer meetings where you would be away and dedicating towards the midsummer meetings, which we'll also talk about. So those are just some of the things that you should consider when you're applying, and some advice that I would give to anyone watching here today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Earl. So the next question is for Heather, Andy, and Brian. As some of the newest members of the member network, what did you do this time last year when you were submitting your application?
Sure.
Go ahead and get started. Sorry, Ryan. I'm going to cut you off.
Okay, sounds good.
So I kind of have a unique situation. So Jeff Husky was serving in the Region 5 representative position, and he actually changed jobs and left our region. And according to the regional position and some of those restrictions around it, they needed to find a replacement for a single year. So I was actually only selected as a 1-year replacement to finish out Jeff Husky's term. But what I was doing kind of in the meantime, before I was selected, was I served as the Colorado-Wyoming State Director, so was involved in kind of the Region 5 leadership team a little bit and sat in on a lot of those Region 5 conference calls, as well as played a fairly large role in helping to plan and organize the Region 5 conference that happened last fall. So just tried to get my name out there as best as possible and serve in as many capacities as I could within my region. Is kind of what got me to where I am today.
Great. So yeah, this time last year I was undecided if I wanted to apply. I applied 2 years prior and didn't get it. I don't think I was ready for it then anyway, but I applied at the behest of some encouragement, so I did. And this past year, I really wanted to do something else within NERSA. I've always been involved in the NCS events, and so I took a stab at this and didn't really know what to expect and didn't know what I was going to be doing and didn't know what my role was going to be, but spoke to a few colleagues around the country and within my department, and they thought it'd be a good fit, so I went after it. I was luckily elected. Still wondering what I might get myself into, or might have got myself into, and kind of found all that stuff out at the annual conference and then in the summer meetings. But no, it's been a great experience thus far, and I think the time commitment is minimal in the sense of being able to handle your job and this opportunity at the same time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, Jess, as the vice chair, can you tell us a little bit about the application process and the timeline?
Yeah, so as has been alluded to a little bit, we will be electing new regional representatives for regions 1, 3, and 5. So Earl, Heather, and myself will be rolling off. So the application process is now open for that. Additionally, we will be also holding elections for a new national student leader and all of our regional student leaders. So those are all the member network positions up for election in the coming months. So initially, a letter of application indicating your interest, highlighting your work experience and skills, as well as your NERSA experience, and a current resume should be emailed to elections@nersa.org. So essentially, that's kind of just a cover letter as I was reading through it, I was like, that's kind of confusing. I was like, oh, it's just basically like a cover letter for this position. So if that helps clarify that a little. So just a cover letter for the member network position. That should be sent in by September 27th is the deadline for that initial application. And then beyond that, each region has their own nominations and appointments committee who will then review all those applications and determine who they would like to proceed to the next round, which is when a more formal, specific member network application is asked of those individuals. And those notifications or those candidates will receive that information to be due by November 8th. And then moving from there, the final slate of candidates. So we slate 2 candidates for elections. There is no number limit up to that point, but only 2 candidates will actually be slated for elections. And that will be announced mid-December with all of our NERSA elections to take place January 18th to 30th of 2017.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so this is now an open question for everybody, and we're going to start with Brian. What would you say to the person who says, I am very interested in serving, but I am too busy and may try next time around?
Well, I don't think, I think if that's something you really want to do, it's something you need to do now. Because in 2 years, you don't know where you're going to be or what you're going to be doing. If you're in a different region, you may not be able to apply. If you got a promotion, you may be too busy at that point in time to take on this opportunity. So if this is something you really want to do, you really need to act now and submit your application and go for it. I think you just need to rely on your organization and your time management skills in order to make sure that you are able to handle the duties. I think it's maybe five hours, maybe 10 hours a month that you're going to be working strictly on the NERSA stuff. And there's a couple of phone calls you have to get on as well. But other than that, I mean, as long as you can delegate and manage your time well, you're going to be fine. And go for it. It's worth it.
Yeah, I think something to add to that, to what Brian said, is, you can't always assume that you're going to get it. And I had a few NERSA colleagues tell me that a couple of years ago. And it's true. There are many NERSA members that are applying for this position. And so it doesn't hurt just to put your cover letter and your resume together and see if you get slated for candidacy. Because at that point you can make the decision, whether you are, serious about it or not. But, again, a lot of people who think they're not ready just fail to just get that application in and just assume that they're going to get slated for candidacy. So that's what I would tell this audience now, if you're really thinking about it, especially students. If you're a student and this is something that you've had in your periphery, you should probably be finalizing everything now and getting that stuff in by the deadline. Because again, this is just a 1-year term for students and just a great opportunity. And if you look at our student leadership team, that group is unlike any other group within NERSA. The bonding that happens there and just the friendship and the camaraderie and the great work that they do is a great thing. So, don't let being busy stop you from a great opportunity with working with good people.
I would echo everything that Earl and Brian had said. And, just to touch a little further on that is, obviously you don't want to stretch yourself too thinly, but I think it's like a lot of other things in life, in that you can always find a reason not to do something. So it's one of those things where if you're able to have that conversation with yourself and either with your supervisor or the significant other, and you're recognizing the time commitment, but it seems like something you are really interested in, then you'll find time for it. And as we mentioned, there is a little bit of a time commitment on it, but it's certainly nothing that can't be managed. So I think it's one of those things that, find out if it really is something you're interested in, do your research, make sure that it is something that makes sense for you. But like I said, if it's something you really want to do, then you'll find a way to make it work.
I would agree with all those things. Time management's just a big piece of it. And then also kind of recognizing that it's a team effort, that you have your other regional representatives to help you with all the different tasks, as well as your student leader in your region. So definitely talk to the people in the current position or who have served in the position before to get a better idea. But doing the research, I think, is a big piece of it as well, of knowing what you're going to be asked to do and travel and some of that stuff that we're going to talk about next.
Great, thanks so much, everybody. And the next question is also an open question to everybody, and we're going to start with Earl. So what would you say to the person who says, I'm very interested, but I don't know much about NERSA governance?
You know, that was my question 2 years ago or 4 years ago when I was considering running for this position, because I think there's this perception that if you're a regional rep, you're all knowing and you have to know every single thing about NERSA and its governance. While that's important, I know for me personally, I learned as I went along. I ran for the regional rep position because I knew I had the leadership skills and the capacity to lead a region and to work with other regional reps to push the agenda of our membership forward. So not having the governance and really understanding what the board of directors does and what some of the other arms of NERSA do as well, I don't think that really factored much into it. And I don't know if anyone else on the member network thinks differently than that, but I think as a whole, by going to midsummer meetings and our meetings before the annual conference, you get that opportunity to interact with the board and understand what the board initiatives are and kind of, what they do on a daily basis. We get to interact with the foundation, which is the fundraising arm of the association, and we get to support as the member network their initiatives. And then we have the series folks who we get to interact with. So I think if you're going to use that as an excuse, so not an excuse, but as a concern, I wouldn't use it as a concern, honestly. And you will learn as you go along when it comes to the governance. So.
Earl, I would echo that. Just because, and I think one of the benefits is because we are supposed to be the conduit to our membership, I think it's actually sometimes a good thing if we don't even fully understand it, because we are in our members' shoes and we know the questions that are out there and can actually help to facilitate those conversations. So I'm sure a lot of us see it all the times, is sometimes we just forget there's stuff that students don't know, or we just get caught up in some things and don't realize, oh yeah, we didn't actually talk to them about that, or maybe we should get a little more specific. So I actually think not having a ton of background in that helps us do our job, because we just inherently know the questions to ask that our members have as well, because we don't fully understand it either. But then to continue off that, I have personally learned a ton about it. Everything Earl said, talked about the different arms of governance, the COGS, things of that nature. I learned a lot about, and then I feel so much more confident in talking to our members about. So, it's not like part of the application process becomes a quiz that you have to take on the COGS or NERSA governance or anything like that. But the headquarters staff that we work with has been awesome as far as, fielding my questions. I still reach out to the Region 3 rep prior to me, and, I've been in this almost 2 years now. So people in our association in general are incredibly willing to help. So again, don't let that fear of not knowing kind of hold you back. There are resources everywhere. People want to help. People want to get the information out there. So you'll definitely be given the tools and the ability to address those concerns or questions.
Hey, Rochelle. We have a question from Sibby Barton from Penn State University for the panel. What is your best piece of advice for first-year professionals?
That's an interesting question. I'll take a first stab at it. I think first-year professionals, there's a lot of anxiousness, and there's a lot of, they want they want to learn as much as they can, as quickly as they can. I think, a lot of times, often the best policy is to kind of sit back and just kind of learn from who's around you and help out where you can until you get more comfortable with the location you're in or the position you're in. It's difficult to come in as a first year professional because you're coming usually out of a graduate assistantship, and you feel like you have a lot of the information you already need to know to move forward and do your job at a high level. But there's some skills that you'll need to learn once you get into your position, and it's outside of the stuff that you learn as a graduate assistant. So just kind of sitting back, asking questions, understanding your role within the department, and learning as much as you can until you're the most comfortable.
Yeah, I think to Cindy's question, one of the minimum qualifications for serving on the member network is looks like to be employed in and or a resident of the region that he or she has been representing for at least 2 consecutive years. So I guess to answer your question, as a first year professional, kind of like what Brian said, my advice would be to sit back and really take in what your regional rep is doing, and to really consider maybe if you don't meet the qualifications of the regional position, to look at a state director position. That's a good jumping off point to get into the member network. State directors do a lot of great work. They're the boots on the ground working with schools in the states to create that buzz and to create that engagement. And so if you want a little snippet of engagement, maybe serving as a state director may be a good launching off point. So
I also think as a first year professional, just getting involved. So if you're talking specifically about member network or NERSA, getting involved, whether that's volunteering, putting your name out there to serve on a committee, getting your name out there is really important. So if your end goal is to serve on the member network as a regional rep at some point, most likely you're going to get eventually, hopefully, slated as a candidate, but then your region's going to vote. So people in your region kind of need to know who you are. So making sure to get involved as best as possible, whether that's volunteering at the COC or volunteering at the foundation table, just getting your name out there and getting involved with the association, I think, is really important.
All right, Jess, do you have anything to add?
No, I would just echo those comments. So we can move on to a next question, so we have time for that.
Okay, very nice. And just my general, going into my 3rd year, get to know your director. They are such a good asset, wealth of knowledge, will introduce you to all of the people. All right, so next question is actually back to Jess. What are some of the projects that the member network is working on this year? And could you also explain to us how these projects are determined?
Yeah, so we've kind of alluded to it in a few earlier responses, but we do have work teams within the member network that about 3 to 4 of us are assigned to each work team. Our work teams for the 2016-2017 year are engagement coordinators, which again works with those engagement coordinators. A lot of our work this year seems to be focusing on making sure there's value to that position. It's not just something that's out there, but wanting it to be a fulfilling experience for those that do it, that there is value for it. What resources can we provide that help people be successful? Another work team is state and provincial operations. So this has actually been a work team for going on 2 to 3 years now. So again, just assessing what our state and provinces are doing, and then figuring out how can we help supplement that? What resources can we provide? How can we put groups in contact with each other if a state or province does something one way and another state or province might want to take that on? So trying to just get some of those best practices and information out there. Another work team this year is our member engagement and leadership. So again, just trying to find ways to make sure our members are engaged in our association and collegiate rec in general, and what do those resources need to look like. And then NERSA as a whole has been focusing on leadership a lot in the leadership pipeline. And if you're sitting there thinking, I'd like to be a member network rep someday, somewhat of what, Heather and Earl touched on is how do you build to that position? Obviously, if you're a new young professional, you're not ready for this position yet. So what experiences can you take on to kind of prepare you for that? So being more transparent about some of those leadership opportunities and how they can add on to one another. And then our last one is communication and social media. So Earl and Heather are actually heavily involved in that committee. And they work on the presentation that we do at state workshops, regional workshops that just talk about general NERSA matters, regional things to note, other NERSA things to note, scholarship deadlines, what's going on across the association. And then we've also really been working on, trying to get some consistency amongst social media. So all regions, Facebook pages, Twitter handles, those types of things look the same. So we just develop consistency across the association. So I know last year's communication team really worked on that, and they're trying to refine that and get some of that information out to our association for this coming year. So those are what we're working on this year. Generally, we usually always have communication in some form just because we need a group to really work on that presentation that I mentioned. But otherwise, a lot of these are really determined at our summer meetings that a few people have alluded to. So the last two that I've been involved in, we've just put really large sticky notes up on the walls in the conference room that we're in, and we'll just start to kind of brainstorm what we like to see, what we think our association needs, what kind of feedback we've heard from our members, and then we try and group those into 3 to 4 work teams that we feel can be manageable and kind of set goals and work from there. So you see some things recurring from year to year, some things will carry on from year to year. I know I was involved in state and provincial operations in my first year, so it's not necessarily a 1 year we're done. If we need to continue the work in whatever form, we will. So that's generally how we determine those.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to go back over to Max with another audience question.
Our next question comes from Mark at Mount Royal University Recreation. Hey, NERSA Member Network, have we considered a Member Network 101 infographic, video, or blog to help give a layperson overview of the Member Network?
I would say some regions and other state workshops will do what's called kind of a NERSA 101 presentation. So the intent of that has always been to try and introduce NERSA to someone that might not have any familiarity with it. So the Member Network, the Member Network as a concept, not as the individuals has been mentioned as part of that governance structure of the COGS and things of that nature. So, but that intent has really been just a general introduction to NERSA as a whole, not just Member Network specific. But I mean, if it's something that we think could have value out for our members, that's obviously our job to take that feedback and consider it. So I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that piece.
Yeah, shout out to Mark for being elected to the assembly. So what's up, Mark? Yeah, I love your feedback because I think one of the struggles that we have is just bringing awareness to the membership of what we do. And so I think kind of what you're alluding to for a video or blog may kind of help drive that knowledge of what we do as a member network. And so definitely, we can bring it back to the communication team, which is Heather and I on that work team committee, and we can really look at that. But, for the audience members out there, I mean, this is what we do. And so we can't make things happen unless, we hear about it from our members. And so, again, just bringing awareness of the work that we do is always a priority, and we want people to know what we do. So great question, Mark.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is for Heather. Could you talk to us about how much travel representatives do for the member network within a given year?
Definitely, be happy to answer that. I would say that it varies from region to region. So for instance, in Region 5 here, we only have a regional conference every other year. So I might travel a little bit more this year than some of the other regional reps. But we all share the requirement to attend some summer member network meetings. Those are usually 2 to 3 days long. You get to do a little bit of travel to the following year's host location. So this last year, we actually went to DC/Maryland. And then from there, it's attending kind of the events in your region. So for this year, for Region 5, all we have are state workshops. So me and the student leader, we split up the state workshops, and so we actually travel maybe a little bit more than somebody else that maybe just has a regional conference. So we try to cover between the two of us, attending all the regionals the regional in our region, as well as any state workshops that happen. Beyond that, I would say it's like Earl said earlier, it's showing up a day earlier at the annual conference for some member network work. But other than that, I think travel is fairly minimal. You do get some travel stipend to help you with some of this travel for NERSA, but other than that, it's just kind of maybe a week or two out of the year, and they try to spread it out by having, like I said, those summer membership meetings, usually in June, I would say, and then your fall conference or workshop, and then the annual conference in the spring.
All right, thank you so much. The next question is open to everybody. So could you all tell us about what you do at the midsummer meetings? And then also, could you tell us about what happens at the meetings before annual conference?
Yeah, so we, at the midsummer meetings, we meet with each other and go over some of those projects that Jess had discussed earlier, and who wants to be on what work teams, and then we kind of get put on some different work teams and who's going to lead those. We also meet with the board, the NERSA board, kind of get to know who they are and what their role is within NERSA. We meet with the series, and so we meet with the staff that's managing all the different groups within the series. And then the foundation. We meet with the foundation as well. And then we also kind of get a feel for each other and who we are and how we're going to work together throughout the year, and what our plan is, and really kind of just set all that up so that we're prepared. This is when you learn the most about what you're going to be doing. And going into the annual conference, if you're new, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into, and so that's just kind of breaking down what the schedule is at the conference, what we have to be at, what we should be at, and what we don't have to be at, and then basically how you set up your schedule for the different presentations you want to go to see. So I'm sure I left something out, so I'll let someone else fill in the gaps there, but that's the general gist of kind of how it all works.
Yeah, I'll talk about it from the annual conference perspective when we're there early. So for those of you who are in Region 1, 3, and 5, I think is the election.
Yeah, it's odd and even.
Yes. So if 1, 3, and 5, we will be going to the conference, and I guess our newly elected folks for those regions will be hopefully elected by the annual conference in 2017. And so that would be the first kind of go around for people who are just newly elected, and you literally just go there and observe. There's not much required of you to know, but it's a chance for you and your outgoing regional rep to sit down and really map out what the priorities are. There's an onboarding process that, for me as the Region 1 rep, I would onboard the new person prior to the conference with bi-weekly meetings, and I know Jen Gudez did that for me. And so we met every 2 weeks. She gave me an agenda. There's a manual that you can go over as well to go over the things that you need to know in your new role. And then you go to annual and really get a sense of, okay, what is this all about? And it's a good opportunity for you as a new rep to bond with the even regions and to work with them. And so it's really an exciting time actually to meet with everyone, because you have a new crop of students and student leaders who are just as confused maybe into their new role, but you all go through it together. And I remember going through it with Jess, and Jess and I served on the assembly together, so we had that relationship prior. But it really is exciting. I think you tend to be a little bit closer with the people that you come in with. But overall, at the end, it's just that time for you to bond with the new leadership team. So.
And I would say, to piggyback on that, moving into the summer meetings, I think that's really when we have the most opportunity to bond and get to know and get the most work done with the current member network. So we do have monthly conference calls. They last about 60 to 90 minutes. So we have that time. But I think those few days that we do spend together as a group, we do meet with a lot of other parts of NERSA, as Brian mentioned, but a lot of that time is just spent with the member network. So we can really start to get to know each other, kind of get a feel for one another, what it's like to work together. And I think those meetings are really key to kind of laying the groundwork and the foundation for how we work moving forward, because the next time we see each other will be at the annual conference. So there's so much that we have to do just via, phone calls and emails and things like that, that having some time to, be face to face really makes a difference and contributes a lot to our overall success.
Awesome, great so much. So the next question is for everybody. In one sentence, could you please tell us what your favorite aspect about serving on the member network is? Or briefly, if you can't do it in one sentence.
I think my favorite part is just, as Heather mentioned, going to the different state workshops we have in our region and just meeting all of the members in a smaller setting. Most of our state workshops are generally 80 to 100 people. So that smaller setting really lends itself towards being able to have more specific engagement with the members. So I really like those types of settings and getting to know the people in the different states more specifically.
Yeah, I think for me, I would say that my favorite aspect is, working with my region. We have our upcoming regional conference in the end of October, and it really is an opportunity for me and for Pat Shank, who's our student leader, to really showcase what the member network is doing and represent that group and the good work that we do. But it's also a chance to add in our flavors to our region. And so we get to, plan the student leadership, the student lead on, and we have a say in some of the conference planning. But I would say that, working with the region membership is probably one of my favorite aspects. So.
Just working with all the great people that are within NERSA. That's my one sentence. But no, I think it's been rewarding thus far, and I think traveling to the different events is going to be a great thing. I've already gone to a couple, and it's great to see how different people run different events, and then also how everyone interacts in the different areas of the region. But yeah, meeting all the people and seeing all the people involved in NERSA is wonderful.
For me, it's kind of like what Jess alluded to, in the sense that getting to go to some universities or schools that you maybe wouldn't normally get to travel to, and meeting people in smaller settings. And then the second piece of that is working with the regional student leader. So getting a chance to work with Tiffany, who's been phenomenal, and kind of taking a team approach to helping to serve the member network as best as possible.
All right, thanks so much. And if everybody could go around and let us know what your final piece of advice is for those thinking about applying, whether it be odd or even year. So obviously the evens have a little bit more time to think about it.
I kind of said it earlier, but just go for it. Talk to your supervisors, talk to the people that you're closest with within NERSA, and if it's something you want to do it. Don't hold back, because as Earl said earlier, it's not guaranteed you're going to get it anyway. So just go for it and see what happens, and then make the most of your opportunities.
I would second that. If you feel if you've done your research and you feel like it's something you want to do, just do it. Even, I still have questions to this day and I just ask them. So we're never going to know everything. So if you feel like it's really something you want to do and you've taken the time to consider you can do it, just do it.
I would agree with that. Just apply, put your name out there. It might take a round or two in order to get elected. So don't get discouraged. Keep applying, and then just get your name out there and talk to the people in the current position to ask for any advice.
And again, I'll just echo what everyone else said. I mean, don't hold back. It's definitely helped me out professionally. I think I've gained a lot of professional mentors and people that are outside of my institution that I can call on for advice and get some really good feedback from. And so, and I guess my other piece of advice is remember that this is a very thankless and selfless position. I wouldn't do it for the name recognition. You get your name in the cool program guide, and it's not even about that. And so hopefully you're in the frame of mind of servant leadership, of you want to contribute to a greater good and move your region and then the profession forward. And so I think that's what it really comes down to, is that you want to make NERSA a better place, and you want to do that with people who are just as passionate. So that would be my final piece of advice.
All right, thanks so much, everybody. We've got one last audience question, so I'm going to send it over to Max.
All right, team, last question for the day. What is one thing you've learned from being on the member network that has helped you in your professional career?
I'll go first. I think in general is just, dealing with people in different ways. I don't know that anyone can ever have enough, experience, just navigating what it is to, work with people on a daily basis. So whether it's our students in our current jobs, whether it's our fellow NERSA members, one of the things I think specifically of is, NERSA often puts together some talking points and information on big initiatives or issues that are out there that, we need to address as an association. And the member network reps are often tasked with getting that information out there and then also answering any questions about it. So I think it's awesome that headquarters provides us with that information, but it also, has required us to, you learn how to be thoughtful and tactful in sharing this information that sometimes, none of us, see eye to eye all the time. So, being able to respectfully have those conversations when you don't necessarily see eye to eye, or, trying to navigate some of those things. So, I've definitely picked up on that and been able to use it, in my current role, and, whether you're talking to students or other full-time staff you supervise, and just, practicing having those types of conversations you can never get enough of.
I think where I've learned professionally is just keeping up with the trends, I guess, of what's going on within the association. There's a lot of things coming up this year with our bylaw votes and for Canada as well. So probably things that I may not have been more in tune in had I not been on the member network. And so it's built my capacity to know what's going on within this association and with what's going on in the field currently. And so professionally, I've been able to use that and actually talk to senior leadership team in my department about some of those things. So it's given me more perspective professionally, honestly. And that's what I've gleaned, I guess, from being on the member network.
I've been out for a very short time, but I think the one thing I would say is just learning about the different regions, and we're all different. We all operate differently, and just trying to figure out, what you can take from each one to both help you understand NERSA better, as well as, it plays into what we do on an everyday basis dealing with students too, because no two students are the same. So just kind of taking what you learned from all the different regions and how you can improve what you're doing currently in your role as well as on your campus.
I would agree with what most people said. So the learning more about district governance and how everything functions. But for me, it was kind of back to what Jess said about like the communication piece and the interaction piece. It's a different type of communication. I mean, you're sending out potentially newsletters that maybe nobody ever responds to, and you're like, are people reading those? And so it's just those daily challenges of like, sometimes I'm doing things and I don't know if there's not necessarily that direct feedback. So it's learning to communicate in different channels that you're not used to. And like you said, over, whether it's conference calls or video conference calls, emails, and trying to read people when you're having tough discussions and trying to do those to the best of your ability.
All right, thank you so much, everybody. Those are all the questions we have today, and we're going to wrap up now. Again, just a huge thank you to the Member Network for joining us today, and thank you for our audience for tuning in. Remember, next month on Rec Chat, join us for another Google Hangout regarding equity, diversity, and inclusion. Last but not least, please remember we're on Instagram now. Hashtag RecChat. Please check us out for personal and professional development tips, inspiration, and updates. Until then, my name is Rochelle Harvey. Make it a great week, and thanks for watching Rec Chat.